Welcome to day 4 of Walking the Witch's Path. Today I want to share with you one of the most joyous expressions of what this path can be, the Witch's Wheel of the Year. There are 8 Sabbats that are celebrated during a calendar year. These 8 Sabbats are points that mark the astronomical quarter days as well as the in-between spots that are considered the cross-quarter days. We are currently in the season of Samhain, which is one of those quarter-marked days that was between, or occurs between, the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. These are opportunities for us to celebrate the deities that are associated with these particular holidays. It's also an opportunity for us to refine and attune ourselves more clearly to the cycles of the god and the goddess. That cycle of life, death, rebirth. The astronomical Sabbats align with the winter and the summer solstice and both of the equinoxes. Those dates on any given calendar also align with the solar transition into a new month in accord with the astrological year, meaning that at that point or on that date of the solstices and the equinoxes, the sun moves for an entire month into a new astrological sign. So if we equate the sun with being the energy of the god, as we spoke of yesterday, that is an opportunity for us to have that whole span of 1 month for us to fine-tune and find our point of resonance, not only within the other cycles of the season, but also within those cycles that are held within the strength of the sun and what each of those astrological signs mean. The cross-quarter days are those dates that are directly in between a solstice and an equinox. And this is where often what traditionally is celebrated for those days is not always quite on the mark. In particular, the case of Samhain. Traditionally, Samhain, or Halloween, has always been designated as October 31st, but the actual midpoint, or the point of celebrating astronomical Samhain, usually occurs sometime between November 5th and November 7th. The same is true of its companion, Beltane. Traditionally, May Day was May 1st, but if you follow the line of thinking of it being directly in the middle of an equinox and a solstice, you get a date that is somewhere more closely around May 5th or May 6th. These don't really matter. Your intention is what is the most important piece of this. These are merely tools that if you truly want to align yourself with the astronomical goings-on, that you may want to consider using those dates as your date of celebration versus what traditionally has been had as the date. So let's take a look at what these 8 Sabbats are. I'm going to start with Samhain, since it is considered by many the witch's new year. Samhain occurs at a point in time where it is actually the third and the final harvest of the year. There are 3 harvests that are celebrated within this wheel. Samhain is last and the final, but those endings also have new beginnings, because what has been cut down as the very final acts of what we are able to take and use to sustain us during the winter months, also what is left becomes the composting of what will be used in the spring when new plantings begin. Samhain is considered a time when the veils part between the living and the realms of the dead. Now there are actually 2 points on the witch's wheel where we consider the veils to part. One is Samhain, and directly across that spoke on the wheel is the celebration of Beltane. Beltane, quickly, is a union of the masculine and the feminine. It is the ultimate time of creation, and historically May Day was a time when the youth in the village Villages would gather together, they would dance the maypole, which was the phallic symbol embedded in the ground, which was Mother Earth herself, and they would randomly go off and consort with someone that they may not normally have had any interactions with. Because of this, obviously, there were usually births, physical childbirths that would occur somewhere a little bit later. But getting back to Samhain, the veils part at this time of the year, and my thought has always been that because Samhain is so directly related to death and to decay and to the renewing and the beginning of what will take a turn and become the stuff that we use later on, I have always seen those veils parting, allowing entry to our ancestors for us to engage with. Versus at Beltane, the veils part as well, but because of the thought of consensual sex, because of the point of actually being able to quicken something in live and physical manifest form, I have always seen those veils as opening to receive those who are awaiting new bodies to inhabit and to be reborn. But that's just my interpretation of it. So Samhain is traditionally a time where we honor our ancestors, where we also open ourselves to the deeper and the greater levels of perception and psychic awareness that we have, so that we can perceive more readily all of those things that, quite frankly, surround us all the time. But we live in a busy, hurried society, and so we need to have often things that are designated and times that are designated to relax ourselves enough to allow the information to flow. The next holiday that comes after Samhain is that actually of the winter solstice. You will also see it called Yule. This is a time when we are beginning the longer days, where there is more daylight that can be accessed, and that will steadily grow until we get to the point of the summer solstice. This is also a time of celebration where the goddess at Samhain actually is the crone of wisdom, but also she takes into herself the quickening seed of what will be reborn at Yule when the winter solstice arrives. This is the birth of the god of light, the god of beginning and increasing light and increasing strength, and also the god of hope, in that the days are now going to begin to get lighter, and that also means that you'll be able to go outside. You'll be able to, if you live in an agricultural society, you'll be able to begin your plans for planting what you hope to actually seed in the ground at the spring equinox. There is also the story of the oak and the holly king. This is just one of many that is used for some of these various Sabbats. The Oak King and the Holly King each represent the god in their forms of light year and dark year. So at the time of the winter solstice, the Oak King, in a fight between the two, actually gives way, and his demise is what brings about the birth of the Oak King, who will be the light that will carry us through to the summer solstice. The assignation of the term Yule for the winter solstice also relates to the ancient custom of having the Yule log, reburning it every year, it being a sacred piece of wood that represented the light that was always renewable and would always return. The next holiday or Sabbat we have after that is that of Imbolc. Imbolc, traditionally and agriculturally, was a time when lactation began, when the mother animals would fill and engorge with milk, when there was the promise that those animals that had been born during the winter months would have enough sustenance and nourishment that they could then be used throughout the cycles and the seasons that were to come. Often you will find the celebration of Imbolc as one where, in the Celtic tradition, they are honoring the goddess Breed or Brigid. Breed being the one who is a triune goddess, a fire goddess, who is is the bringer of creativity, of poetry, of all manner of things that serve to inspire and serve to carry you forward as you're making your plans for what will come ahead. At the time of Imbolc, the god is taking his form and becoming more of the youth that we will see then moving through the vernal equinox and also into his fullness at the time of Litha, or the summer solstice. The next Sabbat is that of spring, the spring equinox. This is often called Ostara. Ostara coming as a reference from the goddess Estra, and also giving a nod to the fertility that is held within the female form, the fertility that is just getting ready to be used, getting ready to be accessed, so that what will grow and flourish as we move into the spring and the summer months will be able to actually be used in a productive way. The next Sabbat we have is that of the summer solstice. The summer solstice is another cross point, that of Beltane. Beltane is the point in the witch's wheel where we have the divine coupling, or the divine union of the maiden and the youth, each being in alignment with one another. It is a metaphysical and literal sexual union that occurs, and from that union birthing new life and something that will be viable and be able to be used and carry on through the latter months is the focus of this particular Sabbat. During the Sabbat of Beltane, often we jump balefires as a sign of fertility and strength and growth. We often have a maypole, which is the ancient tradition of the maidens dancing the maypole and selecting their partners that they then go off into the woods with. The maypole being that phallic symbol, and it being embedded in the earth, which, as I said, is the womb of the mother. Beltane is the other time of the parting of the veils. So they are on opposite arms of the wheel of the year, Samhain and Beltane. The next that we have is the summer solstice, which is Litha. Litha is a time when everything is abundant. Litha is a time where whatever has been planted is really beginning to peak. The flowers are beautiful, the sun is high in the sky, and the day of the summer solstice is also the longest day of the year, before incrementally each day thereafter there are a few minutes less of sunlight until we reach the winter solstice again. The summer solstice is a celebration of the goddess pregnant and full and ready to give birth. And it is also the mother goddess that she represents, and the god is the father god, who is the protector, who helped to seed and quicken what lay within the womb of the mother goddess. And it's at this time of the year when we see the fullness of our efforts that we've put out. It's also a time of great hope, because with it being one of the longest days of the year, it also allows us to enjoy that last full bounty of being able to be outside, being out with nature, enjoying friends, enjoying family. The next Sabbat that we have after the summer solstice flows into Lammas or Lughnasadh. Now, just as Samhain and Beltane sit on either arms of one another, Lammas and Imbolc sit on either arms of one another. At Imbolc, we saw that the directive was one of nourishment and one of sustaining the new life that had been born. At the time of Lammas, the god becomes the feature. It is the sacrificial god, the god who represents the sheaf of wheat. It is the god that is cut down so that the Lammas bread could be, and this also comes from the word loaf mass, the Lammas bread could be baked, could be eaten, and there would be stores of grain that would be readily available. This is considered the first harvest in the cycle of the wheel. Lammas is also a time of the year for gathering friends and family together, for feasting and enjoying the new beginnings of a bountiful harvest, and also the hope that the rest of the harvest will be just as fruitful. The next move around the Great Wheel is that of Mabon. Mabon celebrates the autumnal equinox. It is the place of balance. It is the place where we are at the second harvest. It is preparation of now the animals and the livestock that will be offered up and sacrificed to make sure that there are stores throughout the winter. And often at Mabon, we choose to celebrate the god in his form as Lord of the Wild Hunt, or the Green Man. We celebrate him in this form as being both the protector of the animals, also the guide and the guardian of the humans who need to have that life in order to sustain them, and honorably and equitably take that life, offering up gratitude for it. And he is also the carer and nurturer of those animals that are slain. We all know that as winter is approaching, and by now the days are getting incrementally shorter, we often find that we may not have everything that we need. If we have not prepared well for the winter months, then this can be a problem. And in our modern society, and the convenience that we have of access to food, what I'm speaking of is not necessarily running out of food supplies. What I'm talking about is at a much deeper spiritual level. Running out of those stores of things that we have planted and tended very carefully in our spiritual practice and in our spiritual nature. But now that we've come to this second harvest, which is Mabon, we may not have exactly what we need to carry us forward as we move towards the final harvest and the new year beginning of Samhain. Now is the time to honor the wild, to honor our co-companions who live on this earth with us in whatever way we wish to do that. Often for our rituals, for our coven, we will do a ritual that honors either the Lord of the Hunt, or this year we actually did a ritual that honored the goddess Elin of the Ways, who is a horned goddess. She represents, and ironically, reindeer are the only female animals that have the horns versus the males as is traditional. And so we did a ritual this year using and calling on the energy of Elin of the Ways, combining both that feminine gift of nurturance and healing and being the womb space that can grow and hold the seeds of what we wish to plant, as well as her connection to the animal life itself. And so we did our ritual honoring her. We also brought cans of food, we brought blankets, we brought a variety of things that were then donated to animal shelters. And that was our way of honoring the wild, since we don't really live in a setting where we have to hunt for our food, and you know, our companions that we have with us that are animal companions, sometimes we even forget about honoring them and the importance that they have beyond just giving comfort to us in our lives. And we have reached once again back around to Samhain, to the Witch's New Year. The Wheel of the Year is set up, if you see an image of it, and in fact the front image that I put on this particular video is a picture of the Wheel of the Year. It's envisioned as spokes on a wheel. So you will see that for every one side there is a companion Sabbat that is the arm of it on the other side. In most cases, it's a back and forth between perhaps the goddess being dominant and the god being dominant, or in a lot of cases, it's both, but one perhaps is just slightly more attentive to what the needs are for that particular Sabbat. The winter and the summer solstice, as I had mentioned about the winter solstice and the myth of the Oak King and the Holly King, their respective arms. At the time of the summer solstice, the Oak King, who has reigned supreme from the time of the winter solstice, has been responsible for the life, the trees, the growth, all that inhabits this earth, then engages again in another battle with his brother, the Holly King. And at that point in time on the witch's wheel, the Holly King then takes the crown. He is the one who will carry us into the snows, into the darkness, into the winter. And he is the one who will oversee everything that we do during those times to ensure that when we get to the point of meeting his brother, the Oak King, again, we are completely ready for that reunion of what will be. One of the things that is very, very strongly focused in the Wheel of the Year itself is the fact that it is a circle. It is the continuum of cycle that moves us forward from one place to the next. It is the place within us that even if we do not celebrate as outward markers, if we are attuned to the rhythm and the cycles of nature, to the rhythm and the cycles of the astronomical events, meaning the solstices and the equinoxes, there is somewhere deep within us, sometimes it's not quite so deep, that resonates with each turning of the Sabbat and each new beginning of something else. The other piece to this is that even though they may feel or seem as though they stand alone, they are one continuum flowing one into the other. The building of the light that occurs at the winter solstice is what helps to warm and strengthen the milk that is let down at Imbolc. The milk that serves to sustain is then passed forward, and at the time of Ostara, it is ensuring that healthy and strong animals will be available and usable. Those healthy and strong animals then move into the space of Beltane, its fires, its heat, and just as the animal within them seeks procreation, so too does the animal within us. Not necessarily in the form of a human creation. This can also be used as a way to stimulate the creative fires that are within you for all manner of things. That stimulated creation then moves forward. It moves into the space of the summer solstice, where it can shine its brightest, where everything that you have put into what that creation will be suddenly becomes the thing that is of strength and is of support. And once you hit that high point, it's not a matter of descending down into darkness. It's a matter of a cooling off phase. So we have Lammas, where we have an opportunity to enjoy the fruits of our spoils, the grain, the breads, the family, the friends. We have all of that available and ready and able to us. As we move through that cycle and we have enjoyed these things, we come to the memory of our animal companions who have sacrificed for us and or give us the comfort that we are seeking in the dark and sometimes very lonely and desolate days ahead. And finally, as we move from Mabon, we enter into the space of Samhain, where now the memory turns to those who have passed over the veil, to those who can offer us guidance and wisdom from what they have experienced when they were human, when they were in this life. We seek out those beloveds that we miss and that we also wish to honor at this time of the year. And in that honoring, we quicken within ourselves, just as the goddess carries the seed that will be birthed at the winter solstice. We carry within ourselves the seed that is germinating and quickening towards a greater and brighter light that we can then share with the world when we once again reach the marker of the winter solstice. This is just a very, very brief example of what these Sabbats are and how the 8 days of celebration may be celebrated. There are recipes, there are correspondences. Depending on your pantheon, you may switch these out and use different names or use different energies for these. It doesn't really matter what you choose to use. The important thing is that you make a choice. The important thing is that whether you are a solitary practitioner or you belong to a group or a community, that you hold these days in reverence within yourself, and you share that reverence in whatever way you feel is most natural to you. Doesn't have to be a huge ritual, although many times ritual is part of this. It can simply be something as profound and quiet as on the day of the first light of the winter solstice, you are outside ready to greet that first light, that first dawn. Or at the time of Beltane, you are out in a forest or woods or meadow, and you feel the life that surrounds you, the quickening of the life that surrounds you. And of course, at Samhain, to just sit quietly in the space of your own comfort, pull out something that reminds you of someone dear who has departed, light a candle, and simply sit in reverence and in honor of that individual's life, offering up gratitude for what they have given you, both in terms perhaps of your own physicality, if it is a relative, or in terms of helping you become more fully who and what you are. I hope that you will find some of these ways to engage yourself in learning how to celebrate the Sabbats and the Great Wheel of the Year, and making it your own ensures that whatever you do will be completely transformative, and some of that light will spill over into all of your daily endeavors. Have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow.